Today I want to talk about cloud and best practices. Having worked with a number of enterprises over the past few months on cloud implementations, I've seen one thing, a natural tendency in IT to bring over best practices that have already been proven over time and developed and to try to plug them into cloud. Now this is an excellent idea. But given the rapidity with which sites are being asked to implement cloud and the degree of intelligence built into packaged cloud solutions and also the degree of integration, it makes sense for sites to take a 360-degree view of best practices when it comes to cloud. Now, what do I mean by a 360-degree view? Well, very simply put, there are your own best practices that you've honed and developed over the years that you'll want to see about incorporating into cloud. But additionally, there are best practices that come with the vendor-supplied solution to cloud, if you're using one of those, and also if you're running applications that run on a given vendor's platform or platforms, those application providers also have best practices that they've developed for their particular application in cloud. What this boils down to then is multi-sources for best practices. Your own, which you're already familiar with, but also the governing vendor for the cloud solution that you're plugging into your environment, and finally, those application builders who also work with your primary vendor in delivering or tailoring their applications for cloud. What this means then for IT is instead of having a committee of people that look at internal best practices and what to bring over, that committee needs to broaden its purview so that it looks also at the best practices that are incoming from your primary vendor and from the application providers who work with that vendor in partnership. This means that you've got sources that can come in from many different directions, a broader view of what you're going to use for best practices, and potentially for the committee a little more time in evaluating which best practices you want to choose from and where you're going to have potential conflicts between different best practice ideas. This is a good thing for IT to consider because the more incoming ideas, the stronger your cloud concept's going to be. But on the other hand, you've got to spend the time to weed out the ones that you don't want to use and to find out where you're going to modify your operations and your intervention points with the automation and the best practices that you ultimately implement.